So a couple days ago, this is not a joke, the topic for my next video came to me in a dream. It's about a particular ship. No, I mean like a fandom ship. Sounds great, right? So, okay, here's the thing. At this point in my channel's history, a lot of the people watching my videos are people I know. For example, my mom watches every video I put out, and after a great deal of in-depth research, I have come to the scientific conclusion that my mom is almost definitely someone I know. And because I know a lot of the people watching this, I also know that there are at least a couple of people in the audience who don't know what shipping is. I know. To most of you, that idea is completely unthinkable. Some people watching this are more invested in their OTPs than the characters in their OTPs are. But there is that small minority of people here who in fact do not know what an OTP is, and based on that last comment, might think it's a type of cult. And while they're not really wrong about that, I figure a more in-depth explanation might help in preparation for my next video. And that's right, this is a part 1. If you want to find out why I'm going to the effort of defining and explaining shipping, you better subscribe and, why not hit that bell just to be safe so you can see my further descent into madness with the next video. You may be asking right about now, why don't you just include a brief definition at the beginning of your next video and then move on? Why make this its own video? My reasoning is as follows. Shush, this is my channel. I do what I want. So, what is shipping? First, a definition. Google defines to ship, derived from the word relationship, as to support or have a particular interest in a romantic pairing between two characters in a fictional series. Now, this is a bit like defining family as biological relations, in that while it's technically a correct definition, it's kind of missing the whole vibe and a lot of context. It's a good starting place though, so let's start here. Second, a bit of history. Shipping, as we currently understand it, began in the 1960s with the Star Trek fandom. Now, I'm currently under contract to not talk about Star Trek for more than strictly necessary in my videos due to it being, and I quote, morally and ethically questionable to encourage in oneself an obsession so severe as to border on a mental illness. So I'm not going to go too terribly in depth about this, but suffice it to say the Star Trek fandom was, and continues to be, one of the biggest and most passionate fandoms in history, and in some ways it really kickstarted the current idea of fandom in the first place. Anyway, the romantic pairing of Star Trek characters by fans was well known, and the practice continued in various fandoms and other circles over the decades until the late 90s and early 2000s, when it was finally given a name by the X-Files fandom. Relationshipping, eventually shortened to shipping. Now for some terminology. Relationships that are shipped are called ships, and the people who ship them are called shippers. A one true pairing, or OTP, is a particular shipper's favorite ship, a crack ship is a really absurd or unlikely ship, and a rare pair is a ship that is shipped by only a few shippers. A ship war is when the shippers for a particular ship argue with the shippers for a different ship. Individual ships are almost always referred to with specific terms, usually either the two names next to each other like this, the two names mashed together like this, or a fancy term that kind of describes the ship in a metaphorical way, like Swan Queen, Animal Abuse, and George. And yes, those are all real examples. Hi, editing MMS here. I just realized I completely forgot to mention crossover shipping, which is when characters from two different series that are not canon to each other get shipped with each other. One of the most common versions of this is Elsa from Frozen and Jack from Rise of the Guardians, often getting shipped together in the early 2010s. Okay, back to the video. Now, shipping is a huge thing, and is done in a lot of different ways and for a lot of different reasons. This video is a very basic introduction for people who don't know what it is, so I'm just going to say, I'm not talking about antis, queerbaiting, John Locke, or Drapple in this silly lighthearted video, and leave it at that. If you don't recognize any of those terms, congratulations, I envy you. Maybe don't look them up. So that is basically what shipping is in concept, but what is it in practice? Like, what do shippers actually do? Well, besides making rambling and unfocused YouTube videos, the most common activity is people write fanfic and draw fan art and make fan videos and write fan music and spend a lot of time talking about their ships with other shippers and making posts on Tumblr and Twitter and joining Discord servers about their ships and more. Basically, at some point, any form of artistic self-expression or social communication that can be created or performed by a human has and will continue to be done by and for shippers. Now, I myself am not a particularly fierce shipper of anything.
Wait, what?
Hey, what are you doing out of the AU fic? Get back in there. But anyway, I do have one particular ship that I am itching to talk about, and that ship is going to be revealed in the next video. Stay tuned. Special thanks to my Elder Manticore patron, open parentheses, close parentheses. If you'd like your name read aloud during the credits, like this parenthetical kitten here, or animated across the screen like these lovely people, my Patreon is in the description. Here's my favorite comment from the last video. I'm gonna start doing this at the end of my videos, so if you want your comment displayed, why not comment?